All right, good morning and welcome to our channel. Today, I want to discuss a cautionary tale of what happens when you don't report income. That includes those of you that use federal housing, Section 8 vouchers, or even your federally assisted low income housing. So, before I get started, let me do a few introductions. I'm going to switch up screens real quick for you guys and put up some company information. So, this will be my company, and I'm going to move my little old face or big head here off to the right. And as you can see, we have a phone number, we have a website, and also an email, which you can reach our office. Do keep in mind, we are strictly by appointment, and those appointments are generally not free but low cost. Moving on from there, let's bring up some notes for you guys. Many of you say I talk very quickly, but that's to help keep the video short, and also notes help those with the learning disabilities. Keep in mind, these notes will also be posted in the comments section and description, so you can recap this at a later time if you wish. So when you fail to report income, failing to report required income change can result in back rent, a repayment agreement, loss of assistance, and serious intentional cases can induce a fraud investigation. However, termination is not automatic in every case. The outcome depends on the amount involved and how long it went on unreported. Now, I'm going to keep something very clear, guys. In most cases, no matter what the dollar amount is, you need to report. Even if it's something you don't believe that you should be reporting, you should report and let them make that determination. It's a lot harder to fight a case on the rear end than it is the front end, okay? So, number one, you may owe retroactive rent. When income increases, the household's portion of the rent may increase. If the change was not reported by the Housing Authority deadline, the Housing Authority can recalculate the rent retroactively. Under the current HEB regulation, the resulting rent increase generally becomes effective retroactively on the first day of the month following the date of the income change occurred. You can find it on Title 24, 982.5616. I'm also, again, these notes will be posted as well as the linkage. So here are some examples. The employment began on March 15th. The change would have been reported, but was not. The Housing Authority discovers it in September. The increase in tenant portion may be effective at the beginning of April 1st. So it's important that they will reach back in time and rewind the clock here, and they can change your tenant payments. That's why it's extremely important you understand what income is. If you don't know, reach out to my office, and I can give you income and assets forms for this. It's around 13 pages to help you understand. Moving on from there, number two, you may be offered a repayment agreement. That's not that often. Housing authorities love when they've got fuel against you, okay? When I mean fuel, that means by the time they reach out and warn you, they're usually looking to terminate. So only under certain circumstances or informal hearing may they even offer this reparation. The Housing Authority may allow the Housing Authority to repay the debt through monthly payments in addition to its regular tenant rent. The Housing Authority may consider the following: the total amount owed, the household's current income, whether the omission was accidental or intentional, whether the household cooperated after discovery, previous reporting violations, and the Housing Authority's ability to make monthly payments. That's not excluding or barring the fact that many of you may have a housing authority that's not very well managed and your caseworker is not that great at their job, and therefore they've considered something to be further income when in fact it is not, or it becomes an asset or income when in fact it was something that should have been excluded. In those cases, if you don't know what to do, I would recommend reaching out to my office for an appointment, okay? Moving on, missing payments or defaulting on the repayment agreement can lead to termination proceedings. HUD's guidance recognizes repayment agreements as a method of resolving retroactive rent debts, but the exact terms are controlled by the Housing Authority's policies. Those policies can be viewed under HUD EIB guidance, and I'm going to link that up as well in the notes. Number three, the Housing Authority may terminate assistance. The Section 8 participants must provide complete, accurate information requested by the Housing Authority. A violation of the family obligations can be grounds for termination of assistance. What they mean is under your HAP contract. That would also can be found under Title 24, Code of Federal Regulation 982.551-982.552. Again, linkage will be in the description as well as comments section. Termination becomes more likely when the Housing Authority believes, and trust me, they can do a lot of believing and accusing. So will always act with caution with this. Termination becomes more likely when the Housing Authority believes the income was intentionally concealed, false documents and statements were submitted, employment or benefits were omitted repeatedly, the housing authority member or income was deliberately left off, the tenant refused to provide verification, the tenant defaulted on repayment agreement, or similar violations occurred previously, or you have a systematic pattern of doing this. Okay, under any of those. A mistake or misunderstanding, delayed document, or minor discrepancy should not automatically be treated as the same as intentional fraud. Some of you guys may already be under a guise of fraud or termination. Again, you'd be advisable to reach out to a consultant like me with this got about a quarter of a century or more experience in reversing those decisions with PHAs. Moving on from there, number 4, HUD's verification system may identify income. It can also make mistakes. Okay. So what's important here is the housing authorities use HUD's enterprise income verification system, commonly called EIB. Learn what that is, guys. It can provide information involving wages, unemployment compensation, Social Security benefits, certain new hire information, the possible income discrepancies, and assistance receiving at another address. EIB can alert the housing authority when a reported income information does not match outside records and is therefore risky to assume the unreported job or benefit will remain undiscovered. And you can view information regarding EIB under the HUD EIB overview that I'm going to be linking up. The EIB discrepancy is not necessarily proof of fraud, but records can contain outdated employment inaccuracies, dates, and duplicate wages, identity errors, income belonging to someone else who is no longer in the household, and the tenant should be allowed to review and respond to those evidences. So mistakes quite frequently happen, and so you definitely want to make sure you get a review for that. Number 5, intentional concealment can be treated as fraud. Fraud generally requires that simply making an error, but it usually involves knowingly provide a false statement and deliberately hiding information to receive housing assistance which the household was not entitled. Possible consequences include repayment of excess assistance, termination from the program, which is usually what they go after, referral of HUD. Now, this is even more serious. A referral to HUD's Office Inspector General, which is your OIG. If you're being referred there, then you're going under prosecution. They've already made their determination. Also, moving in that, it can be civil collection action that's usually in connection to an OIG investigation. And in the most worst cases, criminal investigation, particularly serious cases, that usually involves a HUD, not a HUD employee, but your PHA employee. Somehow you've got a connection to them as a friend or family, and the feds have discovered this. And so both the housing authority employee as well as you will be indicted under federal rules. Okay. Those are becoming less rare these days and more frequently. So how quickly must income be change be reported? Well, that is really determined by any given number of housing authorities around America. They don't all operate the same. They have different rules under their administrative plan. So there's no single reporting deadline that applies directly to every housing authority. Many housing authorities require changes to be reported in 10, 15, or 30 calendar days. If you don't know what the calendar days are for your PHA, I recommend emailing them and getting a direct response. But by controlling the deadline is usually found within their PHA's administrative plan. That administrative plan you can request from the PHA. If they don't already have it posted on their website, you can do a FOIA or Freedom of Information Act and specifically ask for a digital copy of the administrative plan. I do not recommend them sending you copies. You'll end up with a $300 bill, okay? The family obligations form can also reveal that information. Annual recertification paperwork, you can also discuss that as well. Interim changes, instructions, and participant briefing packets. All these different terminologies are highly contingent on the PHA and how it operates. In addition to HUD's HOTMA rules, changes when an interim re-examination must actually be processed. Generally, the income change large enough to affect the adjusted annual income by at least 10% may trigger an interim re-examination, subject to important exceptions. In other words, whatever's not being reported or they believe is not being reported, once you exceed 10%, then the radar goes off, and then voila, you've got problems. Either it's a mistake, an error, or fraud. For example, under HOTMA, the PHA generally must process qualified discrepancies in the annual adjusted income. Number 2, it's going to be a qualifying increase may require an interim examination. So when you get interim examinations, it's usually because they're suspect at that point. An increase in earned income generally does not count is not counted for the interim increase unless the household previously received the interim rent reduction during the certification period. And the very last is going to be the PHA may decline to process the increase during which the final 3 months before the annual reexamination. These rules do not necessarily eliminate the family's obligation to report changes. Reporting a change of PHA is deciding whether the process and interim adjustment or two are going to be the issue at play. HUD has established a phased HOTMA implementation, which the PHA requires to use, and that is being updated as of January 1st, 2027. So you want to take a look at that new PHI notice. That'll be under the HUD notice PIH 2026-15. I'm also include that. So there's more I could discuss here, guys, but I've already ripped through this topic very quickly. So I'm going to put additional notes below, and then I'm going to give you some cautionary warnings here, guys. So I'm going to take down the notes. It looks like we're at about 10 minutes. Look, guys, on the cup of this, when you receive notices and other issues related to PHA, it's extremely important that you react, okay? A lot of you guys are going to try to try to argue that point. Look, conversations are worthless with PHAs. You need to have everything as a material matter of record. In other words, you go to the email or you send letters by mail. You don't want to get on the phone. You don't want to sit in an office, okay? These are usually very serious allegations if they bring them up to you or you have a problem with it. And look, you get one shot with this deal. If you don't actually submit compelling evidence to prove your case otherwise, or you simply don't know how to handle the case, you better get somebody involved. The cheaper of two options is usually going to be a consultant like my office, and then the primary is going to be an attorney. But there are very few, if any, attorneys nationwide that are going to take on anything related to Section 8 unless it's an eviction. You need a well-curated plan and informal hearing along with establishing the proofs that are required. That way you can get them through informal hearing to drop this case or modify it without you being banned for 5 years. Take that advice as seriously as I'm giving it, okay? This is not something you're going to toy with. They're not going if you think you're going to Google this or AI it, look, you're going to trash your case and you're going to be in trouble. That being said, guys, I've talked with you. I've enjoyed talking with you guys today. We'll have another EDU or educational video this afternoon. And if you'd like to see our live videos where you can ask questions, it'd be Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, almost around the 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. All other videos we publish are pre-records like this one, and they're generally in the afternoons and sometimes on the mornings when it's not a live. I've enjoyed talking with you guys. We'll see you again. Bye for now.